a non-partisan association of pro-democracy activists and human rights defenders. The Ethiopian-American Civil Council advocates for the respect of human rights and the rule of law in Ethiopia. I have here today with me the chair of the council, Deacon Safari. This is our weekly Addis dialogue, ladies and gentlemen. With it, I'm Shifar Alaka. You stay with us. Deacon Yusuf, thank you so much for your time and welcome to our program.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
As you know, Ethiopians have been holding rallies and demonstrations in the United States of America in different parts, strongly denouncing the attempts by foreign powers to intervene in the internal affairs of Ethiopia, and at the same time calling for unity among Ethiopians. What are your observations in this regard?
Well, it seems like the coordinated campaign against Ethiopia has galvanized a wide range of the Ethiopian diaspora, not only just here in the United States, but all over the world. In fact, this has become almost a litmus test to how wide range of Ethiopian communities have been in the diaspora. And for the first time, the collective pressure that is coming up from various powers around the world has really rallied our community and motivated many of them whom normally would not even know their existence, much less to be able to come on the front line to share their united stance of opposing the pressure that these powers around the world are displaying at this moment. And to be quite honestly, the main aspect of unity was displayed when the Trump administration tried to put undue pressure on Ethiopia back in last year, is when we really saw a very large number of Ethiopians who for the first time came together to show unity. And today, especially with all the crisis that we're dealing with, when in fact these political forces and policymakers and even medias misrepresent so many aspects of the state of Ethiopia, that unity that showed during the time of GERD resurfaced. And what you saw in the demonstration was that a good example of that.
The initiative obviously goes to Ethiopians in the diaspora in the United States of America and of course other parts of the world. And many say that there is little coordinated effort on the part of the government. How has these galvanized Ethiopians to stand in unison in the face of looming threats posed by powers and organizations?
One of the things is obviously that we understood from get-go is that as our numbers grow in the diaspora, we realize that we have unharvested political capital. And it's usually channeled through civic engagement. And one of the things that our organization, Ethiopian-American Civic Council, for the last 6 years is to bring awareness to the diaspora community, and particularly Ethiopian descendants that are citizens of the country, to really be active in the civic process of the country, and thereby they can yield a political capital that can be swayed for the interest of Ethiopia. Essentially, we're not the only diaspora group that does that. There are some communities that, in fact, have been very active in this, and these examples are like Jewish Americans and Cuban Americans. They vote the interest of the state of Israel in the case of the Jews. And so they really show, even though their numbers is very small compared to the general population, they do sway a tremendous political wind based on, in fact, who stands with the interest of the state of Israel. And we're saying now the same thing. We vote our interest, and our interest is the interest of Ethiopia. And as our numbers grow, our civic engagement proportionally grows. So does our political capital that we can harvest, and we should do it in both political parties. And one of the things that I like to talk about extensively is our close relationship with African Americans. Maybe we can address that later on, but and we truly need to associate our interest, because it's still even with 1 million Ethiopian diasporas, in some cases these numbers are being thrown. We're still minuscule compared to the general population, but if we align our political interest with African American, which has been a historical friend, a friend of Ethiopia, then we can truly sway a tremendous political will in any candidate under any of the political parties that may surface.
What should be done to coordinate the efforts of the diaspora communities so that these initiatives become institutional?
Obviously, as you would imagine, the divisions that you're probably witnessing in Ethiopia in itself somewhat also reflects here in the diaspora. However, there are some permanent institutions like the faith, the worship space, both in the Christian community and the Muslim communities. And also there are a number of Ethiopian community associations in various of the major cities. And then civic societies, including ourselves, Ethiopian-American Civic Council and Ethiopian Advocacy Network. We have a track record because we've been around for a while, and made also some contribution in the halls of Congress, even to the extent of passing congressional resolution to benefit Ethiopia. That organization like ourselves now are coming into the front. Primarily, what unites us is the essence of Ethiopia itself, not so much of any particular political agenda or any ethnic agenda, but it's the idea and the essence of what Ethiopia is for many of the people here in the diaspora. So when, for example, the GERD truly brought this issue for the first time. And I want to say this also, for most of us who have been here for a long time, I myself have left Ethiopia back 45 years ago and I've never been back. During this time, the great majority of the time, my association with either civically or otherwise has been against the very government that I run away from. And so if that, I am not an exception. I am in fact a symptom of the general diaspora group that categorically were against the very government they left behind. Now, over the last 2-3 years since the reform process started, almost it's the polar opposite of what we have lived through most of our lives in the diaspora. Unfortunately, we really don't have the experience how to work with a reform-minded government, because all our life we've been in opposition. And at the same time, on the other side, that is from the government side, this is also a new experience in a way that they are they're not prepared to harvest the assets of the diaspora community. So day by day, we're trying to bridge and bring this thing together on both sides of the ocean so that we can be able to be on the same page and work for the interest of Ethiopia. And again, I cannot emphasize this. The GERD was really became a front and center, and many of us who, in fact, never even communicated, never even knew each other, for the first time came together because GERD, the interest of GERD, the interest of Ethiopia forced us to do this. I want to also give you one example of the demonstration of unity that came about because of GERD. Ethiopian-American Civic Council, we put out a petition drive back in April last year, April, June, in that time period. For the first time in the history of Ethiopian diaspora, over 220,000 Ethiopians signed this petition. That is a staggering number. I mean, if we have about 1 million Ethiopian diasporas, that's almost 20% of the Ethiopians that signed on a single petition that showed their collected voice for the interest of GERD. And that is a huge, huge accomplishment in its own. So the unity part of it is, in fact, is when our back is against the wall, i.e. that if Ethiopia is being pushed around by world power, we tend to come together and align ourselves. And for that matter, because that we get united, we seem to also bring other African immigrants to our cause and African Americans to our cause. And that show of unity is what you just saw last week both in Washington, D.C. and New York.
Now that Ethiopia has voiced its concerns and its message to the United States of America, the United Nations Security Council and other entities interfering in the internal affairs of Ethiopia, its sovereign affairs, if you like, of Ethiopia. What concrete message should we expect, Speaker?
Well, that's a very good question. Obviously, what we have here is an Ethiopian government that is willing to constructively engaged with the international community. I think that was a very good decision. That was a good call that the government has done. Now, this is the challenge that we can really provide to the international community and say, the government has opened up an opportunity for you to investigate any kind of human rights violations, any allegation in a joint partnership. The Ethiopian government has openly asked that medias are allowed to enter and freely go and record any news material. While these opportunity gateways are open, the fact that unilaterally governments are asking in an unfettered access in Ethiopia, and it's demanding that they're going to have the exclusive right of investigating any alleged human right violation or any kind of humanitarian crisis in the country, really runs in the face of infringing on the sovereignty of Ethiopia. So when the door is open, we're not a country that says we're sealing anyone from having to enter the country to do these things, and that we say that we're are not going to be accountable to any international bodies, whether it's a civic organization or a government or United Nations for that matter. Ethiopia is not saying that. At the same time, we hear also here in the United States where there are a unilateral conclusion without any evidence of making an allegation, such as saying that there is an ethnic cleansing going on in the Tigray region. Well, the question is, if you say you don't have access to go to find out if this allegation is true or not, how can you make this conclusion without the evidence that you were seeking in the first place? So these are the dichotomy of what they have really twisted themselves into. Now, if you go into the United Nations, and particularly in the Security Council, these kinds of allegations, and particularly on the question and food and security, the topic was brought up last week where the United States were making this allegation in regard to Ethiopia, in regards to the region that we mentioned. It's in a way, it's sad that countries we didn't count on, like Russia, come to the defense of Ethiopia and saying, well, food shortages or food crisis in Tigray did not begin with the crisis that we find ourselves today. In fact, before this military conflict, food shortages did exist in Tigray. And the United States basically had to get back down because they know that that is in fact the truth. And as a result, in defending Ethiopia's sovereignty, basically Russia and China basically said some of the demands that the United States is putting forth in the Security Council were in clear violation of not to get involved in the internal affair of the country and not to be infringing upon the sovereignty of the country. Therefore, United Nations Security Council agenda that United States put forth has collapsed. And that's a good news for us, at least at this point. And all we asked in our correspondence, even to the chairman of the Security Council, Ambassador Linda, from the United States, it happens to be that this month in March, they are the one that are chairing the Security Council. We ask her that with a long tradition of the United Nations Security Council and of that of United Nations, which, by the way, Ethiopia is a founding member of the United Nations, a big contributor of peacekeeping forces, and send Ethiopian soldiers in Korea and Congo valiantly sacrifice their life. We just want to have a fair treatment and be treated according to the tradition of the United Nations, and not to make an exception in trying to penalize or really apply undue pressure on Ethiopia. And what we saw last week, thanks to those friendly countries that really understand what truly is going on, that the United States attempt to use the Security Council to mount pressure on Ethiopia essentially has just withered away.
You have also called upon the United Nations Security Council to play its rightful and constructive role by supporting the Ethiopian government in the efforts to reinstate law and order, and also respond to humanitarian efforts, especially in the state of Tigray. What are your expectations here?
Ethiopia has, of course, currently has, we're probably the only country that are in a military conflict under COVID anywhere in the world. And we're a developing nation with a limited resources under a military conflict, and we have many things that we definitely need from the international community. War is not an easy, harmless existence. There are collateral damages as a result of any kind of military conflict, and the world knows that. Now, Ethiopia is not trying to cover up any of these collateral damages that have taken place. In fact, the crisis that started by TPLF was exacerbated to the fact that in every military engagement that they were facing, and when there is an imminent defeat that they're about to have, they were destroying infrastructures that were so vital for the people of Tigray, and even for Ethiopians to be able to reach out and provide the humanitarian assistance. Roads were plowed, bridges were collapsed, even transportation hubs, airports. All of this evidence need to be played. Now, what we're saying is, if United Nations is going to be an effective organization that is truly concerned about the humanitarian element that we are facing, we want United Nations to be our partners, in providing aid, because currently 70% of the aid, the food aid that's being distributed in Tigray is covered by the Ethiopian government. The remaining 30% is covered by NGO. And this needs to be bolstered even further by assistance that we can get from the United Nations World Food Program. So if they can understand the crisis we're in, they need to be our partners in the remedy of this crisis. Furthermore, any allegation that is coming in any human rights violation, the United Nations Human Rights Commission should be willing. In fact, today, just about 8-10 hours ago, the United Nations Human Rights Commission announced, quite to our surprise, that they are willing to partner with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission in as a joint investigation on any kind of human rights violation that is being alleged. This is a good sign, you see, because before they were making accusations just without any proof, being a mouthpiece to various world governments, and now they feel the weight of the responsibility. And by the way, many of these information that has been circulated in the public by the media, and I would say by a very irresponsible media, has percolated to the level of the policymakers, even up to the United Nations circle. And so we should welcome now that they realize so much of this misinformation and disinformation has really made them to question what is true and what's not. And therefore they're expressed today at least willingness to come to Ethiopia and jointly work with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. And we really wanted that, along with the help that the United Nations could be able to bring for Ethiopia.
Deacon, as you know, some of the messages in the rallies featured the erroneous narratives circulated by some media, as you said earlier, and also the collaboration that should be the unity and solidarity among Ethiopians should be reinforced, emboldened. Tell me a little bit about that.
One of the things that we've done is that we try to approach many of the international medias to provide them with a factual data of what is happening in Ethiopia. These are information that is the government puts out and they should make at least a cross-reference for any report that they do. The other things that we're doing is we launched a Twitter campaign, and I don't know if you guys have followed this, but just as much as the attack on the Ethiopian Defense Force, and as they pre-planned it to do that in Tigray, in the diaspora, they were also pre-planned to literally overrun the Twitter platform, because that is the platform where even you can get policymakers and people that you normally cannot get the opportunity to hear your concern are readily available. And what surprised us is almost the day after the attack on the Northern Command, the TPLF supporters and diaspora were signing up over 3,000 new accounts every single day for the month of November. And that is a staggering number. And so what we've done, Ethiopian-American Civic Council, we created a Twitter platform to counter that. It's called Unity for Ethiopia. It has actually, we have overtaken them now. We really have been very, very successful with this. It's a worldwide, global campaign, including in Ethiopia. And at this moment, I want to ask your audience, please register, open up a Twitter account. Twitter account is where really you can be effective to reach out worldwide for the power to be. Unlike Facebook, Facebook is reduced to just almost an argumentative platform among friends or people across your line. But Twitter is really different. That's why Trump, he didn't have a Facebook account. What he had was a Twitter account. Even being a president of the United States, he saw the power of a Twitter that can literally do away with even the conventional media in order to reach out to people. So I beg our Ethiopian brothers and sisters to really seriously, if you really want to be helpful, being in Ethiopia, you can reach any world power while you are in Ethiopia just as much as I can be here in the United States and reach those people. And the data is really staggering. There seems to be over 8 million Facebook users, some number like that. I'm not exactly sure the exact number, but it's in the millions. But there's only 200,000 Twitter accounts of Ethiopians. We need to change this. If we really want to be activists, and particularly digitally, we need to go into the Twitter platform, join the Twitter campaign, Unity for Ethiopia. It's very easy, and we develop contents every single day. You can choose contents that are truthful, and that's what makes us different, is we only tell the truth. And so that's how we were able to overtake them. And we need to continue to do that. And I ask the Ethiopian people to please open a Twitter account, please join us, and you can be inside Ethiopia and be heard outside with the politicians, the most effective politicians. You can reach them just as much as we do. And that's one of the ways that we have fought this propagandas and misinformation that started from the time when the Northern Command was attacked.